And because of that, they give us another 100 grand. That was £300,000 in total. And of course, I had 6 kids, so I'm looking after them. And at the time, my mother was still alive, so she was number one. As long as my mother was okay, that's all that counted. But anyway, they give us the 300 grand. At the end of 2000, beginning of 2001, they made me a final offer. £967,000. Now, I didn't want to take it. I wanted to carry on fighting. And I don't mean to be big-headed about it, but I'm the one that made the decision for the Birmingham 6. I was the driving force all the way. And of course, 3 of my co-defendants are 13, they're nearly 80 now. In fact, one of them died 6 years ago, Richard Michael Kenny. And of course, if I hadn't have took it, none of them would have been able to get it. So in a way, I was emotionally blackmailed. But that's neither here nor there. I made a decision and I signed the papers. And I took it. So here's what they done with the £967,000. They took the £300,000 back out of it. They then charged me £92,000 fucking interest on the £300,000. They then charged me £58,000 for being in prison, bed and board. And because I'd been in trouble with the cops in the 60s, they took another 25 grand off me. So they ended up giving me £500,000. Out of that £500,000, well, I bought 3 of my kids who were in the worst conditions when I got out. I bought 3 of my kids at their own homes. They still have them today, thank God, and I'm very proud that I did buy it. And the reason why I'm skint today is because since I came out, I have spent somewhere in the region of £250,000 to £300,000 of my campaign money, setting up the miscarriage of justice and paying for it to keep going year after year after year. I don't regret doing it. I only wish that I known then what I know now, because I think me and John and Jerry, we had that 300 grand today, we would use it better than we did then. Would you agree? And that's the only thing I can say about it, but I have no regrets about spending the money. My objective for the Miscarriage of Justice organisation has always been the same. Somewhere where we can go and get proper help, because the help is there. We need professional help. The government in the UK tells us to excise it from the national health system. I live in Scotland. I went 4 years ago. It started getting so bad. And I went to my doctor. And my doctor took him 10 months to get me an appointment with the head forensic psychiatrist on the west coast of Scotland. And I went and seen him. And after 2.5 hours, he turns around and he says to me, "Paddy, I would love to help you, but I don't know what to do with you. You need expert help, and I haven't got anybody with the expertise and knowledge to treat someone so severely traumatized as you." So he sent me back to my doctor, and I waited another year, and then they sent me over to the east coast of Scotland, to Edinburgh. And I seen another fella in 2009, Chris Freeman, who was in semi-retirement. He is the head forensic psychiatrist and consultant forensic psychologist for trauma in the whole of Scotland. And I spent 2 hours with him. And after he turns around, he tells me exactly the same thing. "I don't know what to do with you. I don't know where to send you to get help." So he made a recommendation to the National Health Board in Scotland. And he recommended that because of the deep trauma and because of my anger and my background of violence, he told him straight, "I could probably treat Mr. Hill as an outpatient, but I won't. And the reason why I won't do it is because I would not like to be responsible for what happened after I start treating him." He said, "This man has to go into a secure unit for at least 4 months. Anyway, I ended up after another year, and it was only in July last year that my local health board have agreed, and they made me a proposal, a one-off proposal, and they made it quite clear this was all I was going to get. They offered me a month in a special clinic with Professor Gordon Turnbull in England, who treated Jerry a few years ago. And Turnbull's already told us it's not good enough, a month. In fact, it's 20 working days. And they've also said that if the forensic psychiatrist recommends it, I could have a month daycare. And that is all they're going to give me. I'm going into that clinic in 3 weeks' time. I'm going into that clinic on the 28th of March for a month. I don't know whether it's going to do any good. In fact, I'm quite apprehensive about it. I'm not the most cleverest guy in the world, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm very fucking far from being the most stupidest. And I cannot see how they're going to put 40 years. I can't understand how they're going to open me up 40 years of trauma and put me back together again in 20 days. If they are, it shouldn't be called the Caprio Nightingale. It should be called heaven, and Jesus Christ should be in charge of it. But after all, I fought for it for 20 years, so it would be very wrong of me to refuse it now. So I'm going in. Whether, as I say, it does any good, well, only time will tell. But my objective is to get a proper trauma centre set up where we can receive the help that not only we need, but more importantly, the help that should be given to us without us having to fucking beg for it. The British government doesn't want to help us. And the reason why they don't want is because we are victims of the British state. That is what they don't want to recognise. They don't want to admit that they've done something wrong. And if they were to do the proper thing by us, it would be seen in their eyes as an admission of guilt. You know what? Guilt, they haven't got a conscience in the UK. They don't give a fuck about people, just like the Australian government here doesn't give a fuck about any of you. You're all cannon fodder. And you people here in Australia, hey, you have got one hell of a fight coming up, all you trade unionists. But don't worry, you're not on your own. We've got the same thing going to happen in the UK. We're all geared up for it. And believe me, we're more prepared and we're ready. And you're going to hear them crying, particularly the media when it does come. When your blue comes, the media are going to demonize you and try and portray you to the ordinary members of the public that you're doing wrong because you're bringing the country to a standstill. Fuck the country. Bring it to a standstill. If that's what it takes to get good working conditions and safe working conditions, then let's do it. Because the bottom line is, this government, like the UK government, isn't a government for the people. The only thing it's a government for is fucking bankers and big businesses. That's who's driving the country. And we're the ants. We're the ones that's making the money for them. I don't mind making money for you, but I'll tell you one thing. If I'm working my bollocks off, fuck you taking 90% of the profit and giving me 10. I'll give you fucking 10% and I'll take 90. I'm doing all the work. And that's what this country needs. You've been on the back foot just like the UK trade union, but I'll tell you what, we ain't half fucking quick learners, ain't we? We've learned. And I'll keep telling people, there's a lot more of us than there will ever be of them. The only difference between us and them is they're in government. And that's why they all stick together. Do you know why? Because if they don't, they'd be kicked out of government and they're all interested in their little safe wage packets, etc. And their little positions. Well, we have the same thing. We gotta stick together because we're not just fighting for jobs, but we're fighting for our lives. We're fighting for the future. And you see, when this big blue comes, we've got to win this, because the one thing we don't want to do, we don't want to leave this fucking legacy in 20, 30 years' time to our kids and our grandchildren. We want it now. And if we stick together, we are going to get it. It might be hard. It's all right for them people up there talking, sitting up there with their fucking $200 or $250,000 fucking wage package for sitting in Parliament House talking shite. I wish I could get a job, because I can talk shite like the best of them, you know what I mean? But seriously, the last thing I'd like to say a very special thank you again to Christy Kane and the MUA, and of course, I have to mention Mrs. Maffey. If I don't, she'll kill us. Christy's wife, Anna. To all the MUA members, and to all the rest of the union, the CMF, the ETU, all the rest of them who's made it possible for us to come out here, we are greatly in your debt. And the last thing I have to say is a very, very big and special thank you to each and every one of you for coming here tonight and supporting. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been a wonderful audience. Thanks a million.